Garrett's onto his second out of 8 sheets of plywood. Taking all the extra measures to make sure nothing warps on you.
Yep. Especially this thinner stuff.
The nights cool off as the marine layer creeps in. The drop in temperature is like the 8th strike of a ship's bell, signaling the end of shift. Kinda nice having a house you can be all organized and tidy. Garrett's dad's backyard is the build site for our dinghy, our summer project while away from Rediviva. This isn't the house he grew up in, but our history is all around. I've known Garrett over half of my life, and our memories pepper these walls. Grass between our toes and the rustling of oleander are a welcome change to the sand and the silent cactus we're used to. Rediviva floats on a mooring in Baja. We'll road trip down the coast when we return with the dinghy. We're enjoying the family time and the excuse to build again. The weather's not too shabby either. To puncture through the plans, Garrett took the pointy end of a dart, making a series of holes to then link together with a pencil, forming one of the many pieces to make up our dinghy. How many ultimate pieces do you have? Have you counted the total of cutouts?
A lot.
A lot.
You want to see them all? I've completed this so far.
Nice.
Now I'm working on this.
Each of these rectangles are a sheet of plywood.
Yep.
This sheet includes the center section of all 5 frames, the skeg and the daggerboard trunk. Precise tiny pieces composed of modern materials and assembled with epoxy and later fiberglass, making this little boat light and durable. Durability she shares with her mothership, but her plans and construction are far more detailed. There are 5 frames in total, and they are made up of 3 layers. The middle layer is in 2 pieces and includes tabs or notches to receive planking later on in construction. Garrett must delicately wield the jigsaw around these fine details. He then cuts the notch on the inside edge that will be a part of the seat construction. Again, the middle layer of the framing is in 2 pieces, and only 1/2 is templated in the plans.
So I've got all the half frames done. So I just use those as a pattern to cut the other halves out. It's not necessarily the way I would have chosen to do it. But the frames are in 3 different pieces. Well, I guess 4 technically, because all the frames are halves. And then you got your 2 half frames in the middle, which are the 3-inch pieces. And then they've got doublers on either side at a 3/16 that are 1 piece. And so you put all those together and glue them together to make your one single frame. I mean, I'm sure they have the reasons for doing it, but just like this skeg, and they call for making the skeg out of 2 pieces of 3/8, and you put them together and glue them. But that just makes 1 piece of 3/4. So I don't really get why they want you to glue 2 pieces of 3/8 together to make a 3/4 inch skeg. It seems like more work to me.
Maybe it's a cost thing? Or it's...
I mean, I guess maybe, yeah, you can get it out of these sheets of plywood without having to get another 3/4 inch. So far, I'm really happy with the plans and the detail and everything. But as I said in the beginning when I was filming, like, this is not a sponsored thing at all. So, you know, I will be honest with my evaluation of the plans and how I feel about them. Pretty happy, pretty impressed with the details of the plans so far. I got mad love for George Bueller, but you know, if you're building a Bueller boat, like, you have to be ready for the fact that the plans are very vague, and a lot of things are up for, you know, interpretation, or just kind of, I don't know. I guess there's an aspect of him kind of expecting you to just use common sense for a lot of things, which, you know, I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. But yeah, this is just a whole different building style and technique with full size patterns, and
Oh no!
There's not too much thinking required with this. You could just lay the pieces out and trace them and cut them.
Garrett cuts out the rest of the pieces planned for this sheet of plywood, leaving 6 more sheets to go. Kit builders get to skip these pages and get right to gluing, but Garrett prefers to do it himself.
Once you've got this shape, this pattern, I can lay this down for my doublers, and those are cut in full, and then you glue those 3 pieces together, and those make up the whole frames. And then once I've got the frames done, I can cut my planks, and then I can start actually building the hull. They're made up of 3 pieces, so these are all the doublers.
You'll probably do these next then?
Yeah, I mean, this is just a long, tedious part of cutting all the individual pieces out. But once you have all the pieces together, then you're just putting them together like a big puzzle.
That's when it gets really fun.
Yeah.
Using the middle layer, Garrett traces for the 2 outer layers, called doublers. These will use up his 3rd sheet of plywood.
All right, I've got all my patterns now traced out in full size on the material for the frame doublers, which is 3/16. So now what I need to do, because the doublers they match exactly the frames on the top edge, but on the bottom they're a little bit shorter, or they don't come all the way to the bottom of the frame. So I need to transfer that from the patterns onto the plywood. So you can see right here, so this whole outline is the actual frame, and this inner line is where the doubler comes down to. So it matches up top, but it doesn't go all the way down to the bottom. I just need to take some measurements from certain points up to that line, and then come down to this outline, and then I'll put my dots, put some tiny little tack nails in, and bend a batten around it, and then trace the line. Once these are cut out, then I can just straight transfer the lines from those onto the other side of the plywood, because I got to cut a whole nother set of them, so there's a doubler on each side of the frame.
The doublers are like a frame sandwich.
finally ready to glue all my frame pieces together. But before, well, I guess I'm not finally ready. One step before I can do that, I have to put the two halves of the middle frame section together, because I patterned the second half off of the first one, but the first one I have all my place dots here for the stitches, the copper stitches, and I need to transfer those over to the other piece. As I found with building Rediviva, which is obviously a much larger scale project than this, but I think it's kind of universal whenever building from scratch. There's going to be certain things that you kind of have to figure out on your own. With this dinghy, and I think with most of the dinghies, the build it yourself dinghies from Chesapeake Lightcraft, they offer it in either a kit version or a fully do it yourself from scratch, which is just the set of plans. The kit version, you get CNC cut pieces of plywood for every single piece of plywood on the boat. Perfectly cut, perfect dimensions, all ready to put together like a big puzzle. And the book that they give you is really detailed, but it's also, I feel like, kind of catered more towards the kit builders, where if you're building completely from scratch, there's, I don't know, there's always going to be certain little things you have to figure out. This is not anything from their recommendations. I'm sure they might have a better way or might recommend some other way to do it, but just me figuring it out as I go and kind of figuring out what's working for me. So if anybody else is thinking about building one from scratch, maybe it'll be helpful. I'm working on getting everything pre-assembled for putting the frames together and gluing them all up. So with the kit boat, everything comes to you, like I said, pre-cut, and they've got these nice little like puzzle piece joints, and you just stick everything together, which perfectly aligns everything. But when you're building from scratch, you got to kind of figure out how to do that and keep everything perfectly lined up while you're gluing all 3 or 4 pieces together, so you don't end up with the hull that's all funky shaped because you got your frames tweaked. What I've come up with, you know, at least just thinking about it real quick and wanting to get it done. So each frame is, the middle is 1, 2, and this is the section that controls all of the shape of the frame. It's a butt joint here, and so if you get that butt joint screwed up, that frame is going to tweak back and forth a lot like that. It's pretty crucial to keep everything, to keep these two halves perfectly lined up throughout the whole process. Line these up on the table, clamp them so they can't go anywhere, and then put a little piece of scrap here, and then use the CA glue to just put a few, it's almost like tack welding, you know, with glue. I can then take this frame off the clamps, and then I can take one of my doublers and I can put that down, and then I can pick this whole unit up so it stays perfectly lined up and put it down over this one. And then we go in and grab the one that I already kind of stuck together. Okay, so this is the one that I've already got put together. So as you can see, I glued a little piece on right here, middle frame on top of the doubler, and then I put some little stainless tacks along this frame. All those 3 pieces are now solidly secured to each other. I popped that little middle piece off that I glued together. That middle piece removed, then I could lay this one down on top, perfectly align it, knock a couple just locating nails. I left the nail protruding just a little bit, so now I have 2 little points to locate this frame with everything else lined up. I glued this little guy back on for the time being because I want this all to stay connected for the first layer of glue up, and should keep everything from shifting, because you're dealing with 4, you know, kind of awkwardly shaped pieces of wood, and when you put the epoxy in between everything gets super slippery, and it's really hard to just put them all together and clamp them down. Really hard to keep everything aligned. So then once I get that last piece on with the little locator nails, I can clamp it all, and then I can just pop those 2 nails out. I'll just put a little epoxy in the small little hole that's left. Get everything ready before I actually mix the glue so everything goes smooth.
20 pieces to make up his 5 frames. Getting his system figured out before getting sticky will hopefully prevent headache. Up next, he mixes his first batches of epoxy, assembling the frames to make the skeleton of our new 10-foot tender, one step closer to rowing, sailing, or motoring back out to Rediviva. We hope you enjoy every piece of the build with us. Thanks for following along, and we'll see you next week.